Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Stars of our favorite show are on the TV. They're also on my chest, so you know what we're getting into. Let's not waste any time. Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler-filled, into episode 7 of WandaVision, Breaking the Fourth Wall. Now, if you don't want spoilers, you haven't watched the episode, I'm telling you right now, get the hell up out of here. I don't mean to be rude, but don't do it to yourself, man. Like, don't watch the spoilers until you watch the episode. If you want an idea of, like, what to get out of the episode, you know, what goes on in the episode, you know, the type of general things, how the episode makes you feel, if you should be excited to watch the new episode, you can do that by checking out my non-spoiler right up there. So if you haven't watched, seriously, go watch the non-spoiler, watch the episode, come back, and then revel in all the spoilers that we have in episode 7, Breaking the Fourth Wall. All right, man, so now that's out of the way, I got to just start with my general thoughts on this episode, which was, initially watching it, didn't really feel the pop or the urgency or the energy from some of the most recent episodes that we've watched, particularly like the last 3. Since the sitcom on its own stopped, this has been kind of like the what felt like the quietest episode when you're watching. Like, the stuff that's going on screen doesn't all appear to be huge, or these moments that like really make you go, whoa, check that out, I can't believe that happened, but is more subtle in its approach, while it just delivers big thing after big thing after big thing. This is a revelatory episode, if you will, right? Like, Breaking the Fourth Wall obviously has its direct ties to The Office, Modern Family, the mockumentary style of sitcom television that we're getting in this episode for the thousands and tens. And while that fits with what the actual sitcom is doing, right, where you have these, like mockumentary-styled interviews where the characters are actually breaking the fourth wall and speaking honestly directly to the camera and the audience. But the other thing, especially on my rewatch, that I started to pick up when it comes to the fourth wall is, like, one, we have the fourth wall being broken for some characters, specifically Wanda and Vision, which you're like, wait, Wanda has her fourth wall broken a little bit, as does Vision, as we're figuring more things out. And, we also have, like, physical breaking of the walls as Monica gets back into Westview this week. So while it was a somewhat quieter feeling episode, the big stuff that's in there, and then the rewatch this time around, we got some things to talk about. Because like I said, knowing that, you're breaking the fourth wall this episode, does that make everything that gets said in the episode that much more important? Could everything that's being said be more real? Or is it just like things like in those, like, mockumentary styled confessionals when those are going on? Should we be paying more attention? Maybe we're just continually setting ourselves up to follow all the breadcrumbs and all the clues that Marvel and Kevin Feige are laying out there for us, and like they're hoping we're just picking them up and we're running with them, and we keep running away from the main answers. And we saw last week that, last week shook me real bad, man, where it was like, I don't know what's going on anymore. I had all these thoughts and theories, and like the Mephisto thing around Quicksilver still seems to be a thing. But like Agnes was really, really thrown off by Vision, like even more than I thought she would. Like, maybe that's not who she is, exactly who we think she is. Spoilers, the big reveal at the end of the episode is that Agnes is Agatha, and that she was just kind of playing along in some of those situations. And we get a cool little montage into the behind the scenes of like what Agatha has been up to in town. But we'll get there. I don't want to jump too far ahead. But, it is one of those, like, the simpler things, right? Like the things that we first felt like, this was caused by a mental breakdown by Wanda. That was what the episode last week gave me, that vibe. And like, even though I was still getting kind of Mephisto nightmare vibes from, Pietro, if Agnes wasn't Agatha, maybe this is much simpler than we thought. Well, now we know Agnes is Agatha, but it could still be simpler than we thought, where the original theories everyone had were mental breakdown leads to this anomaly. Clearly, Agnes is Agatha Harkness. Like, that was the guesses on everyone's plate, and so far, that's the first big guess that, big thing that we've thought about, theorized, that's been confirmed. But like I said, we will get there. So the question is everything important or is it not? Well, the only way to know is to throw it all out there. So to do that, let's rip through this entire episode. I got pages on pages on pages of notes again this week because they pack so much into these tiny little episodes. And if we start right at the top, we're starting with the previously on. Ever since that moment where Wanda threw Monica out of Westview, and we've seen that scene 3 completely different times, right? The original way we saw it, the perspective from Wanda, and then on the previously on, like her response to Vision when he asked where's Monica, or where's Geraldine, changes in the previously on. So always paying attention to those things. And while most of the previously on was all straightforward, the one thing that I didn't really pay a lot of attention to, I guess, when it was happening, is when Darcy gets sucked in. Because as she gets sucked into the anomaly, it literally looks like she's breaking apart and then being put back together. And when you think about what she said with Monica's cells and how they're, constructing and deconstructing and reconstructing themselves and, metastasizing and remetastasizing or whatever the words are that she's using. She's talking about all that and you're like, well, in that reality, they really are. Like, it's breaking people apart, almost like Willy Wonka to a degree. And is that reassembling of the body the thing that's screwing up the genetic makeup for people? If that's what's going on. I still don't know if Monica knew about her powers before now, or if Wanda's hex has started to mutate her body in a way that has given her powers. But we confirm also this episode that Monica does have powers. We will get to that, but we must start with our lead, Miss Wanda. She wakes up this episode and does one of those classic, I wake up, it's empty, where's my person? And Vision, of course, is not laying next to her in bed because Vision is somewhere in a field on the outskirts of Westview. Probably, I don't know what happens to Vision when he tries to leave and comes back, but clearly he must be re-energizing something. He ain't come home. He's still out in the grass. And as Wanda is getting up, you hear her talking we've all had those moments, where... And you're figuring she's going to be you get angry, you say things you don't mean, and she sort of does, she's you let your fear and your anger get the best of you, and when you think she's about to say, you say things you don't really mean, she goes, you unintentionally expand the border of the false world you've created, and this is happening in one of those, like I said, mockumentary conversations, where she's speaking directly to the camera, and, telling you right there, if you didn't think after last week that it was me, guess what? It was me. I created this, fake, this false world that we're living in. And I unintentionally made it larger when I was trying to save Vision. So that kind of, harkens back to, at first I thought she was just trying to move it to grab Vision. And in trying to do that, she just unintentionally expanded it much larger. Which is one of those cool things about what the MCU has done with Wanda, and the fact that, even though she is easily the most powerful Avenger that we have, sorry, Captain Marvel, I'm pretty sure if Wanda wanted to, she could take you down. But it's not just that she is one of them, but it's that she doesn't have a full grasp on her powers, and she never really has completely understood her powers. And much like Pietro said last week, it was a big jump from going to creating nightmares in people's minds and having, red wiggly woos come out of your hands to creating a false reality and changing all these people around to be characters inside of a show that you've made. It's a big jump, and the fact that, she doesn't have that full grasp on her powers is something to be nervous and scared of. Because if she loses control, who knows what she's capable of. So I kind of like that she kind of puts it out there that she unintentionally expanded, the borders of this false reality. And, it's... Again, one of those unsettling things that they're able to pull off so well with the show and its execution. Because as she's saying that, you're re-seeing the sequence of, the anomaly pushing outside of where it's been and capturing all the S.W.O.R.D agents. And you see the S.W.O.R.D agents running, people are screaming as they're being transformed into circus characters. But the score underneath all of it is this funny little giddy kind of score where you see all this stuff happening, and it's like, oh, it's like for a laugh. Like, yeah, see, remember when that happened? But in reality, it's like, it's no laughing matter. And it's that, dichotomy that I love about this show is like, it follows the sitcoms to a T, even when screwy, messed up, creepy things are happening. And because you're following it like a sitcom, it like seemingly takes away from it, but it only makes it creepier and more unsettling. And I just love that vibe still exists, as we don't entirely know everything yet. I mean, we definitely don't know everything. But then, Wanda, who clearly is, also, like when she's saying you've had one of those days, like, she's kind of hungover. I said that in my non-spoiler. Like, she didn't drink, but using all of this magic and all this power to do all these things, it's draining her out, man. And throw into it, like, you just realized that this whole Pietro guy was fake, and Vision is MIA and could be dead, and you don't know. Like, Wanda's just needs like a day. It's one of those, like, I'm hiding under the covers, I'm just gonna go disappear. And of course the kids come running up the stairs and they're like, mom, you gotta come help us, like, our video game is freaking out. And the first thing they ask is like, are you awake? She's like, no, mom's resting her eyes. Like, a classic line that I think every parent has probably said to their own kids at some point or another, when they want something, and it's early, or like they're trying to nap or just like relax. Like, I'm resting my eyes, I'm here, but like, go away. And naturally, like a kid, oh, you're awake. You're not sleeping, you're resting your eyes. Our video game's freaking out, and we see this quick little montage of them playing the game. The controller changes, and the controller changes, like, it's going backwards, right? So they're playing like a newer console. It looks kind of like a Super NES like controller. Then it looks like like a joystick controller. Then it turns to Uno cards, and like her immediate response is, "Mom is resting her eyes." Like, go on, get out of here. I'll come down eventually. Like, I just want a day to myself. After she says that, she again is in the confessional, and she says, and this was a very big Claire moment. She has a couple Claire moments from Modern Family, the mom on that show, where like the things she says, I feel like I've heard Claire say before, and this was definitely one of them, where she's like, you know what? As punishment for my actions last night, I've decided that I'm gonna quarantine staycation myself. Just one day, just to myself. And as I mentioned, that approach kind of like, not too much is going on, specifically in town, because Wanda's not trying to do anything today, man. Like, she is just trying to regroup, re-energize, reset, and then figure out where to go after she gets through today. So, she's going with the staycation mode, and, as she goes downstairs, she, flings the covers off after the boys disappear, and she is still in her Wanda costume from Halloween. Another one of those kind of, like, nods to, like, being hungover. Like, if you've been out partying or doing too much, or you're out too late, like, you usually just crash right away and you don't even get into your pajamas. So she gets up, gets dressed, comes downstairs, and literally is just thinking about having a day, like she goes to get like cereal, and it's not like the healthy cereal, it's like the sugar cereal, and she takes out the milk, she goes, gets the cereal, she comes back, and you see the backside of the milk like reconstructing itself. It's gone backwards to like, the plastic bottle that she's using, back to a classic carton with a missing, like a picture of someone who's missing on it. It looked like a missing child. And it makes you wonder, like, is that I didn't go back and pause, freeze frame it. Wondering if that's like a hint to the fact that the children of Westview go missing quite frequently in the show. But then as she's kind of like, it actually starts to physically change a bunch of times. And she just kind of is like, what's happening? And it stops, and she pours the milk in, and then she's like, all right. As she's eating the cereal, we go back to one of those confessionals, and she's like, I don't know what's happening. Like, not entirely sure, but probably just a case of the Mondays, right? Like, she's just having an off day, not thinking like, this is the result, I think, of her losing her grasp on her powers, or using her powers too much, that it's draining her, and she's starting to lose more and more of her hold on her reality, which, by the way, just became a lot bigger than it previously was. Like, she just brought in a whole bunch of new people that she now is in control of. So, she's having a rough go, and we go into our opening credit theme. Definitely Office vibes for me. Just the sound of the music kind of seemed like the Office vibe, and it's just all these signs, and much like the Office, you see signs all around Scranton of different places or whatever, and here, everywhere you go, it just says Wanda over and over again. Here's a picture of a cake, it says Wanda. Here's, the Italian deli, but it's Wanda. It also has moments that don't just say Wanda, but, there's a shot where it says, sorry, we're Wanda. Like, sorry, we're closed, but sorry, we're Wanda. Like, my bad, that's who I am. There's a mug that says, I heart Wanda. Then there's, a note that looks like a ransom note, like cut out from different pieces of magazines, that says, I know what you're doing, Wanda. And it's like one of those, like, who is saying that? Like, is it us? Like, we know what you're doing? Or is it Vision? Is it Agnes? Is it Pietro? Who's saying, I know what you're doing, Wanda? One of those, like, again, those, like, unsettling that just pop up every once in a while. Like, I don't know who is supposed to be saying that, but somebody knows something. And, like, again, that's kind of like one of those unsettling things. And then, there's a calendar that says Wanda. And again, we have a heart over a date. Now, it's not the 23rd, I believe, which is what the date was on the calendar when the hearts came over. But this heart is around Friday the 10th. I don't know if that date means anything, if any of you guys have connected that date to anything that might mean something for potentially Wanda and Vision. Maybe it's a date related to maybe when they got married or something like that in the comics. I'm not sure. I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's like the same calendar that the hearts were from, but different days. And the other thing, though, that I like with that is, like, it just says Wanda, and then right at the end, there's, like, a blank space at the top of the calendar, and Vision's name slides over, almost as if, like, oh, yeah, that's right, Vision is part of this show, too. This isn't just Wanda today. Like, it is a WandaVision show. And then, below it, again, this fourth wall breaking that the show does throughout the whole episode, where, like, it says, created by Wanda Maximoff, because we now know 100% for sure Wanda created all of this. So those are the little things. I love those little things. Page 1 down. We got like 6 more to go. I did write kind of big. But then after the opening credits, we jump back outside and we're with the, Hayward and the S.W.O.R.D folks. And the first thing that we see is a shot of the hex from the outside. And while the hex was expanding, you could see some of the hexagonal shape to it because, one part of it seemed to be bowing out further than the others. Here we get an even more detailed look at the hex shape that's going on. Same thing. You can see that it's got like the top half, but then there's like almost dimensions and angles and stuff inside, like almost like it's creating a dome type look. It was just a really cool shot that we haven't seen of the hex yet. That kind of popped for me. Hayward, one of the 2 people that got away from the S.W.O.R.D camp with Hayward, goes, what's going on with the show? And she confirms it's just dead air. Like, the frequency's gone. It's disappeared because Wanda has turned it off. She needs a day to herself. So nobody can see to the outside, which makes you wonder, right? Like, Wanda wants to be able to just live in this reality, supposedly. And she's the one that is clearly editing and putting out this broadcast. Like, the day that she decides she wants off, the broadcast shuts down. When things aren't going right, like we've seen the bars and tone come up, we've seen the edits that happen. But why, if it's one of those, like, the frequency disappeared, and to make the signal die, you remove the frequency, she was intentionally letting it out, maybe. And this still harkens back to that, like, idea of, has her, personality splintered to some degree in this breakdown where there is some piece of her that's good, that, like, wants to call out, like, wants to let people know, hey, things are okay. And then there's this other part that's like, screw everybody. I just want what I want, and I don't care what happens to the rest of you. This kind of idea of, like, is Wanda the villain knowingly, or is she kind of just, like, not? And we obviously know that she is kind of in that gray zone where she is definitely controlling everything and knows that it's wrong. Like, she asked Pietro, like, you don't think what I'm doing is wrong last week? But clearly she doesn't also want to give it up because she has the one thing and now the 3 things in the world that she would want with her husband and her kids. So it's like, it's one of those like weird things. Like, she lets that broadcast out. Is that like a cry for help? Is that supposed to ease people's fears about what's going on in there? Why is she sending out transmissions? And again, why are they sitcoms? One of those questions that we haven't had answered yet, but I continue to think that like maybe sitcoms were something that her and Pietro got to watch when they weren't being experimented on or messing with their powers with Hydra. Was Nick at Night the thing that her and Vision watched when they were on the run for those couple years? Who knows? But like, clearly she has to have some sort of connection to the sitcom. We don't have any answers for that yet. But anyway, you hear Hayward. He's like, I want to prep the team. We launch today. And that's the last time we're going to see Hayward, I think, the entire episode. Because the S.W.O.R.D operation is like being rebuilt on the outside here. But he's launching something. And we don't see what that is yet. And that'll probably happen next episode, which I hope extends out to longer than 30 minutes. These episodes are too short, yet I have too much to talk about. You know what I mean? Then we jump over. Vision wakes up outside the circus. He's kind of like a little confused, and he's looking around. And the guy who Darcy first talks to when she pulls out the thing and figures out the whole bit about the frequencies, and he like doesn't want to chit chat. He's like, just do your job. Well, he's one of the people that got sucked into the hex, and he is the strong man in the circus, which is really funny because to get out of the circus later on, like, Darcy almost breaks his nose like Colcox, and it's like, strongest man got defeated so easily in the episode. But he's talking to him. He's like, you must be the new clown. Great, you're already in makeup. Your act is coming up. You're working with the escape artist. And the camera pans over, and there's Darcy tied up in all these chains. And Vision's like, oh my gosh, I know her. And he walks up to her, and right away you can tell that she doesn't know him. He's like, you don't remember me, like from last night, like the thing. We locked eyes. We had a thing. We had a moment, like an unspoken connection. And she's like no, and I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like in all of these, and then she just breaks the chains right off because it's part of an act and they're fake. So she's not actually tied up. So those handcuffs became something that she could break out of. And all she can think really is like, oh, you must be hitting on me. Like, get out of here, and starts to walk away from him. And like, clearly the hex full on in Darcy too. No way for her to fight it. Vision kind of goes to chase after her, and we jump back to Wanda, who's coming into the living room with her cereal. And she goes to the kids. She's like, hey, have you guys seen your father? And they're like, no, do you want us to go look for him? And she's like, no, like that, you don't have to do that. If he doesn't want to be here, we can't make him come here. And it kind of, again, speaks to that idea of like, Wanda, one, we know she doesn't have control over the kids. She can't do anything, and there have been certain things that have been happening that she can't change or fix. Now the whole world is skitzing. But like, Vision seemingly was someone that was under her hex, yet now he's out of it. He's asking questions, and instead of trying to wipe him or get him back to where he was before he was asking questions, Wanda's just kind of like, he knows what he knows, and now he'll come back when he comes back. And it's like one of those things where it's like, if that's what you think, if you think he's going to leave and not come back, you could take the whole hex down. Why continue it if you're not going to wipe his memory? It's one of those things like, does she have actual control over Vision or not? And it's, one of these things that certainly I'm kind of struggling and grappling with. Like, how much control does she have over Vision? Like, was most of it because he had no memory, so he had to play along? And now that like he's starting to realize things, she can't make that stop, so Vision's going to do what Vision's going to do, I guess. So, she's just, like I said, like, whatever. Can't change anything now. Billy mentions that, his head hurts. That everything is really, really loud. He actually might have mentioned that upstairs in the bedroom before they even came downstairs to address the video game stuff, which Wanda doesn't address anyway. But like he is clearly, his powers are starting to open up, and he's starting to hear everybody in Westview. And you would imagine that he's hearing, like, there's probably a lot of people screaming from inside because they are trapped, inside of themselves. But anyway, so, then after she says, like, we can't really make Dad come back if he doesn't want to, she sits down, she turns on the news, and you can see the forecast is 7 straight days of, like, mid-70s to high 60s. sunny with a chance of clouds on a couple of the days, but as it always is in Westview, picture perfect weather. And as she sits down, the kids start to ask about Uncle Pietro, and Wanda like snaps, and she is like, because he obviously said something, the night before where he's like, you can't kill your dead husband twice. And like they taught, Uncle Pietro was talking about like re-killing dad, and Wanda just is like, do not listen to a word that man says. He is not your uncle. Do not trust him. And you're like, all right, well, Wanda definitely knows for sure that he's not Pietro after the events of last episode, and is someone that she doesn't trust. And where is Pietro? Also, like, not in the house. So after she threw him through that graveyard, who knows where he went, but he, much like Vision, also did not come home. And then they asked, well, who, if he's not our uncle, who is he? And at first, Wanda kind of sounds like she's not going to be able to answer. And is it like, does she know but doesn't want the kids to know who he is, or does she not actually know? And as we listen to her talk about, she basically is like, sometimes, there are answers for everything, but Mom doesn't have all the answers all the time. And I know zip, zero, zilch, nada. Like she is very adamant that she does not know who Pietro is. So it kind of takes me back to assuming that if what we're hearing is real and she's not trying to trick the kids, or just doesn't want the kids to know who he is in case she does know, she's putting off a vibe that, like, I have no idea who he is, where he came from, and that surprise on her face had to have been, you look like Pietro, but you're not Pietro. What's that about? And as she's kind of just going, she's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything, and the more I think about it, I just think everything is meaningless. Like, nothing means anything anymore. And, like, she even says, she's like, I know that's kind of dark, but, like, the 10-year-old kids, like, they'll be fine. And the minute she says that, I just sat there going, is everything meaningless? Like, to the point where it's like things that are happening, she doesn't know if they hold any meaning, right? Like Pietro showing up, what did that mean? Oh, well, it's not actually Pietro. Maybe these random things that are happening just don't mean anything. It's like, almost like the show talking to us, breaking the fourth wall, going, all them breadcrumbs you guys have been chasing, that's what they are. They're just breadcrumbs, man. There are red herrings all over this freaking show, and you're thinking way too much because we just litter the background with all the things we know you're going to eat up. And I was kind of saying that last week too. Like, Kevin Feige's too smart to let things slip or let things not be part of the plan. And it feels like one of those, like, I was setting you up on purpose, guys, but at the same time, doesn't necessarily mean we're completely off, right? Because we're going to find out later, like, Agnes is 100% Agatha, and Pietro is somebody. We just don't know who exactly. But it's one of these things, like, watching the episode this time around, like, there was a lot of things being said or discussed where you were like, does that mean more than what it means because you guys are breaking the fourth wall? Oh, the show is genius, and it makes me think so much. There's one other line there, too, that I really enjoyed where, after she says, like, I know it's kind of dark, but, like, their dad is Vision. Like, he's made of vibranium. They literally inherited tough skin. It's like, that's funny, especially because, like, he's not the biological father, so they don't actually have tough skin. But following that, right on cue, there's a knock on the door. Wanda uses her magic. Agnes comes in and is like, oh my gosh, like, what's going on? Wanda, how can I help you or whatever? And, like, she can see that, like, Wanda is barely keeping it together just by some of the things she said. Like, her confessional, interview, she's like, I showed up just in the nick of time because she was one split end away from cutting her own bangs. Like, she's going crazy. And Agnes basically shows up to go, hey, let me take the kids off your hands. You want that staycation quarantine by yourself? We'll give you the whole episode by yourself. I'll take the kids. And the kids are like, no, we don't want to leave. Like, we need to stay here and make sure Mom's okay. And she's like, no, just please, just go with Agnes. Like, Agnes, you're a lifesaver. Thank you. Like, peace and quiet. So, Agnes decides to watch the kids. And as they're like saying, like, do we have to go? Like, we should be here. She's like, don't worry, kids, I don't bite. And you cut back to that confessional, and like right before that, she looks at the camera and is like, like one of those classic like Office looks. Like that's what I mean. There's a real good blend of the Modern Family and the Office stuff going on in this episode. And anytime there's like one of those looks right to the camera, and you're like something mischievous going on. Like I was getting like Dwight vibes coming from Agnes, and she's her confessional is like, well, I did bite a kid once. And you're like, I want to know more about that story and what Agatha's real deal is in wanting kids. Like, is she gonna eat them? Like, is she a witch? So I liked all that stuff. That was fun. And then when she's on her way out, she's like, actually, Wanda's like, is there anything I can do for you? She's like, well, I do have a mole on my back. Like, right about, and Wanda's like, she kind of gives her the look, and Agnes is like, boundaries. I get it. Kids, if you want to help me, though, it's right over here. And she walks out, and then Wanda just gets to have the house to herself. And you can kind of see her just kind of like, kind of sit down, like, all right, I'm going to watch TV, I'm going to eat my cereal. And then all of a sudden, like, everything in the house starts going backwards. The TV goes back, one of the lamps runs back, the wallpaper starts climbing back up the walls. Everything is kind of reverting backwards, and as it's doing it, sometimes when it shimmers or whatever, this, like as the change is happening, you can kind of see through it, and you see like the wood paneling, and like it's one of those things. Even in the trailer, when I've seen that, it's like, is Westview like a rundown town? Like if it's an actual town, and Wanda wasn't originally there, nor was Agnes, as we learn later, are their houses like the boarded up, like, spooky houses in Westview, and they inhabited these technically cruddy looking homes that Wanda's fixed? Because when you see some of those things breaking through as items change, it does kind of feel like it's old and broken, So I'll be interested to see if like the hex has changed the locations of the two houses that both Agnes and Wanda are in, being that they weren't previously residents of Westview. And it ends with another one of those Claire moments where like you cut to her and she's like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I think. And like I was like, oh, I almost feel like that might have been like verbatim quoted from Modern Family, because I feel like I've heard Claire say that. But like if that's what they were going for, they're nailing those things. And just kind of continues to, add to the fact that like she is losing her grip on what she can control. And now that she's made it bigger and there's more people, she's got less control, to the point where she can't even control the things closest to her, right? It's like as we get away from Wanda, it feels like she just kind of shuts people down, freezes them, so she doesn't have to control them. But now even, maybe not people, but things in her immediate proximity, she's losing control of. And I think that's because she is draining herself by doing all of this for I guess it sounds like, based on things that were said in the episode, like a week, or at least that's how long Darcy has been watching the show. So you can tell that she's losing her grip. And then we jump back outside the hex to go meet up with Monica and Jimmy. And this is the first point I was like getting real excited. I was like, ooh, it's time to find out who that aeronautic like space engineer guy is. Like, is it Hank Pym? Is it freaking Reed Richards? We're finally going to get to find out. And as they're driving, they get, Jimmy gets that email from Darcy, and he's like, oh man, Darcy really did break through all of the back doors, and she's in. And, Monica's like, what she said, it's like, Hayward has got this, secret weapons project called Cataract. He's wasn't trying to, like, dissect Vision. He was trying to turn him back on. Like Monica says, like he was trying to get his sentient weapon back, which is why he is so zeroed in on wanting to get Vision. Give two craps about what's going on with Wanda. He just wants his weapon back. And that delight when he was trying to escape, he's like, he really does want to get out last week. But then we didn't really address Hayward watching him get ripped apart. Like, if he comes out of the hex, you're not going to have your sentient weapon back. I don't think. At least based on what we saw there. But regardless, that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to figure out how to get Vision to turn on. Now, whether he was able to take programming or information out of there to use for other things that are being built, potentially, Hydra AIM type things. I don't know, but if Hayward is a bad guy, he's certainly diving into the science side of the world. That world that world that Vision would come from. Whereas whoever the big bad is inside of Westview is gonna be a magical big bad to go up against Wanda. So it's kind of cool that you're seeing two different villain structures be built throughout the course of the show, and that of course is if Hayward is actually a bad guy, or if there is a small possibility it feels like he's just a dick in real life, and that's just who he is. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad guy. I feel pretty confident that he's a bad guy working for either Hydra or AIM or one and the same or both. Who knows? But anyway, so they now know what he's got going on. And then, as they pull up, they're getting to their location. And, Monica's like, here we go, man. They're right there. And we go up and she's like, there's my person. And you're like, we're going to meet him. And it's not a him. It's her. Even though she's like, I got to meet my guy. It's a lady. And her name, womp womp, is Major Goodner. When you try to find Goodner in Marvel, doesn't connect anywhere. So she's a nobody. That one fell a little flat. I really thought we were building to something, and maybe who she reached out to was a potential that big cameo person. Maybe it is Reed Richards. Maybe it's Hank Pym, and maybe who they sent was this person that she met up with. But we don't know if it's not Goodner. We don't know who she was reaching out to directly. So we don't know. What her deal is, but she's not a Marvel character. All we definitely seem to know is that she must have known Maria previously, because Monica mentions the loyalty she has for her mother, and her mother would have been appreciative, would have thanked her. And they roll out this thing, she's like, is it built to your specs? She's like, it's perfect. I'm like, I don't know how they built this thing this fast. If we've been here for 7 days, right? That's how long Darcy's been watching. And Monica made that call, 1-2 episodes ago? So maybe 2 days. How fast are they building these space rovers? And to my specifications, makes it seem like you built something custom for me. And then later on, Goodner says oh, she'll go right through, man. That's our most heavily powered, loaded up space rover. And you're like, okay, is it a space rover? Is it a custom job? If it's a custom job, how they do it so fast, who knows? We have it, and they're gonna get ready to suit Monica up with it. But before we go there, back to the old carnival. Vision's still chasing down Darcy, and she thinks that he's trying to hit on her. So he says something to her, and she's like, fine, I'll go out with you. And Vision's like, this is not working. And we see a mime doing one of these, they've got something they're about to drop. He's like, oh my gosh, that mime carrying that box is gonna drop it. And Darcy turns and she's about to say, oh, your back problems. And as she says it, woken up. And what is cool is Darcy wakes up, and she's the first person to wake up knowingly aware of everything that's going on, right? Norm and other people have woken up and they're like, where am I? What's going on? And Darcy wakes up and she's like, whoa, okay. And one of the weirdest things and most interesting things that she says in that moment, she's kind of gaining her bearings. She's like, oh, hello, self. She knows that she had herself suppressed to become some sort of character. And then she even says to Vision's like, awake? She's like, yeah, I'm good. I secretly wanted a guest role on this show, but that sucked. And just the whole way Kat Dennings delivers that whole bit, man, you're just sitting there that gave me a really good sense of what it is that you feel in just a short period of time, right? We had that lady rolling that tear, and you can only imagine how long she's been trapped like that. But for Darcy, someone who's just in and just came out of it, right? Even Monica was in longer than Darcy was by the time Darcy was woken up. And it was just kind of I'm here, remember what's happening, cool, and acknowledging, hi, I'm me again. You know that you're you, things are okay. Just a really, really excellent delivery from Kat Dennings in that situation. So I love seeing that. And then He asks who she is. He's like, "What's your name? Your real name?" And she's like, "Darcy Lewis." He's like, "Darcy Lewis, I intercepted a communique from you, and S.W.O.R.D. So like, I know that like you're someone I think I can trust or whatever." Other than just the eye-to-eye contact that they had when he was saying "help the people" last week. Strongman comes up and is still trying to get them. He's like, "You guys are up," and Vision's like, "Oh no, me and the doctor have other business." And Strongman's like, "No, you guys are up." Darcy looks and sees like a food truck. She's like, "You want to take this conversation on the road?" Vision's like, "Yes." They get in the truck and guy won't leave. He's like, "I can't." He's like banging on the window. He's like, I can't hear you." Darcy eventually makes like 2 loops and then takes off. And where they end up, we hear Vision later on say like, "I feel like Wanda is creating obstacles intentionally for me not to get home as fast as I could get home." And that, the strongman like trying to delay them feels like it could have been an obstacle. When we get to the next location, we 100% definitely get the feeling that like Wanda's doing something to keep Vision out, or somebody is doing something to keep Vision from getting back home right away. It could be Agnes, Agatha. But there's just strange occurrences that'll happen that we'll get to later. But as they get out, Vision has 2 questions specifically for Darcy. He's like, "I got questions," and Darcy's like, "I got all the answers." As far as like theorizing what's happening, and the first 2 things that he asks, she doesn't have any answer to. He's like, "Are my kids okay?" She's like, "I don't know." "Who is the fake Pietro? Like, what's that about?" She's like, "I don't know." It's like right after she says the answer, she has no answers for the questions that really matter, the questions that we want answers to that we still don't have answers to, and we don't have answers because we don't know if the boys are okay. We don't know where the boys are by the time we get to the end of the episode, and we don't know who the fake Pietro is. Now, the thing that I think is interesting is that Vision knew it was a fake Pietro just in the time that Pietro arrived and he left for Halloween, because he doesn't see any of the interactions that Wanda has with Pietro that would make Wanda mistrust him. So it was interesting that like he knew it was a fake Pietro, unless in talking about some stuff Darcy had mentioned fake Pietro to him. Like they clearly have a conversation off screen just based on some of the things that Vision does ask her. But at that point, you're like, why would he know that Pietro's fake? Imposter Pietro, I believe is what he actually calls him. So yeah, no answers from Darcy. So we go back to the house, and you see things keep going backwards, right? Like the TV changes, a light changes. When I said that before, it was just like 1 or 2 things and Wanda like fixed it real quick. Now everything is just changing and she can't stop it. She can't figure it out. And she gets to another one of those like I'm fine moments, but this one a lot darker, right? Like she's like, "I'm fine. It's fine." I think like there's a more of a like I'm kind of freaking out that I can't control this stuff. And she says, she's like, "I don't know what's going on. I don't know why everything is falling apart and why I can't fix it." And then you hear a producer, which is an Office bit. The producer sometimes would ask questions. I wasn't a religious Modern Family person, but I've seen a fair chunk of them, and I don't remember any times where the producers say anything. So I think that was like one of those Office things that kind of gets in there. But the producer goes, "Do you think it's what you deserve, and that's why you're getting it?" type of deal. And she's like, "Whoa, what is it? You're not supposed to talk. Like, stop that." Like, she's in Modern Family where they're not supposed to talk, and they're doing like the Office thing. So she's, and it's one of those like it almost feels like she's questioning her subconscious, right? Like her subconscious is starting to bubble up. Like, this is because you deserve it. Like what you did, this is what you deserve, Wanda. And she's like, "You shut your mouth and go back where you belong. I don't want to have to deal with guilt on top of all of this grief I'm dealing with." Then we get our only commercial of the episode, our 7th of the show, and this is a big one. Now, last week, the Yo Magic, I thought might have been a metaphor for what was going on with the people inside of Westview, because, he couldn't open it, and it almost seemed like he was glitching, and then just wasting away as he's kind of trapped there on the island. After seeing this commercial and thinking about the Yo Magic, seems more like Wanda was starving for anything after the end of Endgame, right? And like, or no, not even before. she was starving, just like the loss that she was suffering from. And then all of a sudden magic gets bestowed upon her, and the magic, is like yo magic. It's for survivors or whatever. So like someone giving her magic, to cope with the depression. So now the next stage is Nexus. Your magic hasn't fixed anything. Well, now you can have this depression medicine called Nexus, and we will get to what Nexus means momentarily. But when we watch the commercial, it mentions that it's a unique antidepressant that's used to anchor you to your reality or the reality of your choice. Side effects include feeling your feelings, confronting your truth, seizing your identity or seizing your destiny, and possibly more depression. Don't use Nexus unless your doctor has cleared you to move on with your life. Because the world, Nexus, use it because the world doesn't revolve around you, or does it? And like you're just watching one of the commercials, is great. Like you're seeing the lady that we've been seeing over and over, and she's kind of going through. And when they're talking about realities, you see her like lay down on a bed, and then they cut away, and then they come back, and it's the same spot, but she just walks, and you're like, oh, they skewed the perspective in the shot, like talking into it. But when it says like use it to anchor yourself to your reality or the reality of your choice. The side effects seem to be things that we're seeing Wanda go through right now. She's feeling her feelings a lot. We even hear Monica later, the pain that she's going through, that's her truth. That's the thing that Wanda needs to confront. And seizing hold of like your destiny, right? Which seems to be like, for her, it's vision, creating this world. This is my destiny. This is the thing. And it's just making her more depressed. Now, the things I think are interesting with this commercial, first and foremost, don't use Nexus unless your doctor has cleared you to move on with your life. Well, we have one doctor in the MCU. That's Doctor Strange, and we know in the comics, after the fallout of Avengers Disassembled, before House of M starts, Doctor Strange has a one-on-one with Wanda where he kind of traps her in a room, in a reality, so he can try to communicate with her. When they said doctor, I was like, are they talking about Doctor Strange? Like, are they hinting at Doctor Strange? Because that, event originally was supposed to be the thing to follow WandaVision. That will be the conclusion of this 3-story multiverse arc that we seem to be getting with this Spider-Man and Doctor Strange 2. So there's this feeling like maybe Doctor Strange talked to Wanda first. Before like she was cleared to like go. Maybe Doctor Strange, or maybe just say Doctor, had to clear her from the Avengers side of things. It would make a lot of sense if Doctor Strange talked to her, had some sort of conversation before all this started. But Nexus is a big clue for what's coming in Phase 4, and that's the multiverse, because the Nexus is the place where all of the different universes and realities intersect. That crossing point is called the Nexus. And in the comics, there are Nexus beings. One of which is Wanda. Another of which is Kang, who's, coming... Kang the Conqueror is coming for the third Ant-Man movie. So, like, you're seeing that, like, Nexus beings are starting to pop up besides just Wanda. And we keep saying Wanda is one of the most powerful. It's because she can interact with reality. And, from the Nexus, like, you could jump to whatever realities you want to go to. Like I said, it's that intersecting spot. So, like, did Wanda end up at a Nexus when she started this? When she started it, did that kind of open up the Nexus to now, like, we're going to get to that point where other realities might start crossing in? I think something with the Hexus, something with the Hex will connect to the Nexus to make a Hexus. But that is, like, your key piece of information that, like, Wanda could be one of the major keys to unlocking the multiverse as a Nexus being. And that could bring in big bads that are also super powerful, like Kang the Conqueror, even though that's not connected to this 3 arc. These are the things that are coming in Phase 4. And I feel like maybe we'll get to see the Nexus. maybe we'll, but that's where we're heading. So just seeing the word, I geeked. I was like, oh, they said Nexus. That means multiverse, like in the comics. Like, this is like multiple, like the multiple realities that exist. Like, that's where it all stems from. And it's the antidepressant medicine that we're giving Wanda. We're giving Wanda the ability to access realities, possibly, to cope with her depression. Anyway, like that, I was like, that's a big old drop, and I feel like a lot of people won't latch onto that right away. So that is a big one. Then we come out of the commercial and we jump to Agnes watching the boys. She's chilling with the boys, and she's like, they're both kind of quiet, and she's like, Penny, for your thoughts. Like, what do I got to do to find out what you guys are thinking, or what's going on? And Billy goes, I like it. I like it here because it's quiet. He's like, you're quiet, Agnes, like on the inside. And most likely what Billy is referring to is the fact that the noise that he's hearing are the Westview residents calling out in pain from inside their trapped bodies. Doesn't hear that with Agatha or Agnes because she's not a Westview resident. And he hasn't necessarily pieced all of that together, but this is what he's picking up and what could turn Billy into a threat for Agnes, which maybe is why we don't see the kids after this sequence. But then they kind of are asking her more like, is Mom gonna be okay? Like, should we do something to help her? And she's like, look, Mom's a super mom. She can do anything. She's gonna be fine. And like, again, she has one of those like office like Dwight turns where she looks at the camera and is like, and then you go to the confession and she's like, how do you tell a couple of kids that their mom has gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? Like, she's gone crazy. What else am I supposed to say here to these kids? And that, like I said, is the last time we see the boys. We do not see them afterward. And the other thing, too, is that Billy is playing with the rabbit. So, like, that's what's going on there. And then we go back to the outside world. Monica's getting ready to get into her vehicle. She gets in. She takes off. And that's where Wu is like, so is she going to be able to get through there? And then Goodner is like, hey, this is our top-end space rover. She's going to smooth ride right through that wall. And then, of course, that's not what happens. Hits the wall like it's a wall and stops dead in its tracks. Monica tries to push, and you can see it kind of pushing in, but it's not getting there. Like, the force is keeping her out. And eventually it starts to, like, you hear Goodner say, oh, the integrity of the vehicle is compromised. Like, it's disintegrating. And Wu's like, it's not disintegrating. It's being changed. And at this point, Monica is getting out so she doesn't get hit with whatever that is, because at one point, like, she's like, I think I'm gonna get through, and like it actually stands up, like she starts driving up the wall. For a minute I thought she was gonna go straight up on top of it, but now as it's like the hex is starting to get through the vehicle, Monica jumps out, takes a really terrible looking stumble, like fall, like she bounces to the ground, where like Wu is like, get medical teams in there right away. I was like, yeah, do that. And as that's happening, you think that the truck is gonna get sucked in, and it doesn't. It gets spit out, and half of it did sort of get through and has been turned into a van, and the other half is the space rover. And Monica sees that, and it's almost like she puts two and two together. And this is where I don't know if she knows or doesn't know about her power set. Because if she knows about her power set, that could be a thing that connects in her brain to make her go, oh, I can definitely get through this again on my own. Or if it was more of the, if I come at this with less force, like we got half of the rover in. If I just try to sneak in, I might be able to do it myself. But she looks at Wu, and Wu's like, no. And she's like, I can get in. And she turns and she goes and she runs. This is one of the coolest sequences that we've gotten. And I recommend watching it with the subtitles, because much like when she woke up coming after the blip, she is hearing voices as she's trying to run through the hex. And in this sequence, it makes the hex look like it's 10, 20 yards long. Like, it's a long way for her to go, and she's fighting. And as she's, like, fighting her way through, you're seeing all of the Geraldine characters. The first one in the black and white. The second one from the 80s with the afro. One that would probably be in the current Westview. And they're all kind of behind her, and you're hearing all of these things being said from inside, where, let's see, first we hear Maria, and she's talking about Kat. She's like, I don't want to leave. Monica then responds, young Monica, it's okay. I can go, stay with my grandparents. Grandma and Papa will take care of me. Like, you go do what you got to do with, Captain Marvel or whatever. You assume space. And then there's another bit of that piece, maybe of that conversation, or another conversation where Monica goes, maybe I can meet you halfway one day. Then we hear Nick Fury. Fury says, only if you glow like your Aunt Carol. And then Maria says, and you were the most powerful person I know. Or I knew. So, like, it's almost like they're lining those all up together, but it feels like Maria maybe is saying that to Captain Marvel. Like, you were the most powerful person I knew. Maybe, like, he's been guessing Captain Marvel did something to Maria. So either she's saying that to Monica, like, you were one of the most powerful people I know, or directly to Captain Marvel. Either way. Then you hear the doctor say your mom died. Then Wu says she was an inspiration. And then finally you hear Danvers go, your mom was so lucky when they were handing out kids. Because they gave her the toughest one. And as she says that, you see all of the Monicas snap into S.W.O.R.D. Monica. And her eyes light up and she bursts through. And you're like, oh, the powers are starting! And as she looks up, and again, this is where I don't know if she's never experienced her powers and doesn't know what's happening to her, or she has, right? Like, because when she said, like, she's been through all those tests and scans before, was she talking about herself? Was she talking about what her mom went through? I don't know. And in this, I still don't know, because she looks up and is looking very confused, like, what is happening? And then we see her vision, and for me, this is the clue that tells me that she's going to get the spectrum powers, because it seems like she is seeing the light spectrum come off of all these different electronic things that would be sending off some kind of frequency or whatever, which plays into her spectrum powers. And like I said, it kind of felt like a spectrum type view in what she was seeing. And then eventually she kind of looks nervous. She blinks a few times and it dissects. However, later on in the episode, she seems to turn that eye thing on and off as easy as she wants. And if she doesn't know how to use her powers, how is she controlling that aspect? So then it makes me wonder, like, does she know they're her powers? And it's just been so long that she's suppressed them, she kind of forgot what it was like to use them. Could be either way at this point. But she's definitely caught a little off guard, but she's definitely got her powers. And when she figures out what's going on, she takes off for Wanda's. And as she gets to Wanda's, we jump to Darcy and Vision, who are in the van, and they're driving, and Vision is asking Darcy questions. And clearly there's been conversation that's happened in the van outside of what we've seen in the episode. He brings about his death. He's like, so Wanda killed me. And Darcy's like, yes. And sort of, kind of, that was it. Like, after that happened, then the bad guy rewound it, and then he killed you himself, and then Wanda had to, like, Darcy is laying out exactly what Wanda's going through, to the point where now Vision is starting to understand her trauma. I just don't understand how all these people know exactly what happened. Like, we know Thanos rewound it, and then the only person who saw that happen was Wanda. Why does everybody know? I don't know. Like, did they have a debrief where they just went through everything, and that's just knowledge that anybody can access? No clue how Darcy knows all these things. But she knows all this stuff. Going through it with Vision, first it's about his death, and then, they come up to a traffic light, and Darcy's like, man, it seems like there's a lot of stops and, like, lights out here in the sticks, huh? Because, like, outside of Westview is just kind of, like, open land, more or less, and fields and whatnot. So Vision's like, this is kind of weird. And then we get our first, confessional from Vision, where he's like, I'm pretty sure Wanda is making sure that we don't get home as fast as I would like to. Because we seem to keep running into things. First it's that traffic light. Then the light finally changes. They go to leave. And, like, a whole crew of, like, construction workers show up and start setting off. And, they can't go anywhere. And then you hear, as it's raining, like, they're complaining. Darcy's like, I thought it never rains in Westview, and it's raining. And you remember seeing the forecast, all sun, inside of maybe Westview itself. Like, so they're on the outskirts just outside of Westview. So, like, maybe out there, Wanda doesn't have full control of everything. So it's raining in real life, so it's raining in the hex. And because she expanded it and made it larger, she has less control. She can't keep it sunny. Even though the forecast inside of Westview is like 70s and sunny, maybe partly cloudy here and there. So, that is kind of a weird little bit that Darcy notices. Like, that doesn't supposed to rain in Westview. Then Vision also asks her, he's like, so what does this all make me now? And Darcy basically says to him, he's like, I honestly thought, Wanda just flipped a switch and brought you back. But I don't understand why you can't leave the hex if that's the case. But she does say to him, she's like, but I've been watching WandaVision for a week now, because you see Vision kind of breaking. Like, the only person he's been able to trust to this point is Wanda. Now he's finding out all this stuff about Wanda that could explain the traumas that she's had, but also, like, what does this mean for me? What has she turned me into? What am I if I'm dead 2 times already? And Darcy, picks up on that and just kind of wants to ease him. Like, I've been watching the show for a week, and the one thing I can tell you that is for sure real in there is the love that you two have. Like, that is not fake. And that's an important piece for Vision, because as much as, Wanda has done all these things that might not be okay, at the core of all of it is that love for Vision. And I think him knowing that is really important. So from here, we go back to Wanda's and Monica running down the street, heading for it, for her house. Wanda's inside, doing something. All of a sudden, the door just flies open, and Monica yells, Wanda! And Wanda spins and is like, what are you doing here? How did you get in here? Again, this idea that Wanda doesn't quite have as firm a grasp as she thinks she has, because I think using all of this energy to keep this thing up, expanding it, making it bigger, it's taking more and more out of Wanda, where now, someone like Monica can get through. And she's like, Wanda, listen to me. This is all about Vision. Hayward was trying to bring him back. That was the thing. Wu was, when they found that out, Wu says to Monica in the car, he's like, somebody's got to tell Wanda this. That's what Monica tries to do. And right away, she's like, I don't even want him, and puts the hex on her, but instead of throwing her out, she just lifts her up, sends her out of the door, and Wanda is pissed. And you're like, she could do anything to her right now, and she kind of just holds her up in the sky as she starts kind of yelling out to her. And as they come out of the house, you see all these people kind of walking and moving about, and they all stop. And you hear Wanda, as they're all stopping, start shouting. She's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want nothing you have to say. I don't care. All you do is lie. She's like, first you send in the drones, the missiles. As she says Pietro, and this is one of these tricks that we've seen a bunch of times in the show, right? Where Darcy is about to call Hayward a dick, and as she says "dick," they jump and he says terrorist, so it sounds like Hayward is a terrorist. They've done this a few times, and as Wanda is saying these things to Monica floating up in the air, she says Pietro, and we cut the first time we have seen Dottie in 3 episodes. Since basically Pietro showed up, Dottie's been nowhere. Now, we haven't seen Pietro all episode. There's Dottie looking at her flowers, and she looks up at Wanda as she says Pietro, and then everybody freezes, and now it's just Monica and Wanda, and she's like, all you do is lie. And clearly, with her saying, Pietro, she thinks that Hayward sent him in. Must be a S.W.O.R.D agent trying to trick her. And you even hear Monica saying, we didn't do the Pietro thing. And she's like, I don't care, you all lie. And she does this, it looks like she's gonna, pummel her to the ground, and it almost looks more like she just kind of drops her. And for a second, you're like, maybe she's not trying to hurt Monica, like Monica thinks. And as Monica comes down, she does the super hero pose where she lands one knee down, fist on the ground, and you see blue energy go through her legs and arms as she hits the ground to kind of absorb the impact. And then her eyes are on. You're like, she's using her powers. And again, if she didn't know that she had them, if she started to mutate because of the hex, how does she know to kick them in? And it seems like she knows how to kick them in pretty easily. I think it was more she forgot what it was like to use her powers because she hasn't used them in so long. Now that she's remembered, she gonna be using them Spectrum powers, hopefully more and more, as we run down the wire here. But like, when Monica lands, she looks a little like, okay, she was gonna like kill me, it seemed like, but she doesn't. And Monica's move is to try to relate to her, where she's like, the only lies that I've said are the lies that you put in my mouth. And you hear Wanda, she's like, be careful what you say to me. And the red woogly woos are starting to form on her hand again. And, Monica's like, look, I get it. I know what you're, and she says this outside. She's like, I know what Wanda is feeling and what she's going through. That's why I have to get into her. And she's like, look, I can relate to what it feels like to lose someone. And it's a pain that's hard to deal with or to accept, and she's clearly talking about her mom. And she's like, I lost the most important person to me, and I had no control over it, and there was nothing I could do to change it. And it's even more frustrating for Monica because she wasn't there when it happened, because she was blipped away. It was completely out of her control. There isn't anything that she could have done because she wasn't there. And when, she kind of is making that breakthrough, and, Wanda isn't, like, ejecting her right away, she's like, you and Hayward, man, like, that's what makes you different. You didn't kill me just now. Hayward wants to burn this whole freaking thing down to get what he wants, but that's not how you are. She's like, don't let him make you the villain. And I think Wanda, like we've been saying, is responsible for things, but is she really the bad guy here? Like, I think she's relatable. And Wanda goes, how you know I'm not the bad guy? Like, maybe it is me. Maybe I am the bad guy, and that's just the fact of the matter. And it seems like Monica is starting to break through to her, and just like always, when someone's about to break through to Wanda, someone else has got to show up. And as they're having their outs, the only person not frozen in town, Agnes, moves the thing, sees what's going on, goes right out there, and she's like, excuse me, Missy, you've overstayed your welcome. You should leave. Wanda's been through enough. Wanda, you come with me. And Monica's like, no. And Agnes just starts walking her to her house. Monica's like, Wanda, you have to take it down. And Wanda spins. And like, as Agnes is like walking her, she's like, no. Like, I will not take it down. So like, there might be some good in there for Wanda, but as far as she's concerned, she is not going to lose Vision again. No matter what, no matter who comes at her, no matter what the deal is, she ain't taking it down. And that's kind of that villain end of it. Like, this is all about Wanda and what Wanda wants. And if she's not getting what she wants or what she needs, she's not gonna fold. She's just gonna figure out how to keep what she has. And you see Agnes usher her away. We go back to Darcy and Vision one last time, still stuck at that traffic light. And Vision's starting to have one of those interviews again. And he's like, now I understand all of Wanda's trauma and stuff. And it's hard to kind of digest. And then he almost like simultaneously, like, I think they see like a school of kids, like as everything opens up one more time, Darcy's about to take off. Someone shows up with like a stop, like holding a stop sign, and a train of little kids walk across the street. She's like, kids, what's next? Puppies? Like, I don't understand what's going on. And that's where Vision kind of like in his talk to the camera breaks. He's like, wait, what am I doing here? I gotta get back to my wife. This is ridiculous. He takes it off, and then we jump back into the car, because that's how those shows operate, right? Like, you're watching a scene, that scene will continue, and then you have that interview that's like happens after all of this, where you're kind of reacting and retelling. So you end up right back in the van, and he phases up through it and flies off, because you can't stop him if he's flying. And Darcy's just sitting there like, cool, I'll just meet you over there. Then we finally get to go back inside Agnes's, this time with Wanda. Kids nowhere to be seen. Wanda, sits down. Agnes like, take a load off, sit down. I'm going to go make us some tea. And Wanda starts looking around the place. And there's creepy vibes just coming out of this place, like, hard. And she's looking around. She looks to, like, the rabbit. Senor, I can't think of his name. I want to say Sparky, but Sparky was the dog. But you got the bunny rabbit. And then she's like looking around, and then there's like a weird fly on the curtain. And the kids are nowhere to be seen. Now, granted, there would need to be 2 rabbits if she had turned Billy into a rabbit, but it almost feels like maybe Agnes is hiding the kids somewhere, or she turned one into a rabbit and one into a fly. And maybe Wanda's piecing that together. And that's when you hear Agnes say something again, and then Wanda's like, where are the kids? And she's like, probably down in the basement. So Wanda heads to the basement, and like, creepiest basement ever. The minute the squeak of the door as it opens is creepy. And like, as soon as Wanda looks down there, you're like, I mean, you need to go down there, but like, I don't want to go down there. And she goes through, and at the beginning, it's like just an old creepy basement. But as she's moving around, she's calling for the boys. You're hearing like a larger echo. She finds a hallway. Dude, this basement is... it's definitely bigger than the house. Could be running under multiple houses, who knows. But there's also all these vines and things like all over the walls. And as she comes into like the main room, you're just like, this is a witch's lair. We are going to find out that this is Agatha. This is going to be awesome. I can't wait. And as she's walking around, you got like a wall that's got like glowing orange and red stuff going on. There's a cabinet full of probably stuff for potions. It looks like skulls and like limbs and different things and potentially jars or things. Like, I'm like, you're just sitting and you're like, that's totally like a witch's cabinet for potions. As she's looking around, her eyes stop on a book, and the book is glowing. Some kind of crazy color, and you're like, whatever is going on here, definitely tied to that book. I don't know what's in there, but that book's definitely got to be important, because right as Wanda's about to go towards it, you finally hear Agnes's voice, and she comes in, and as she comes across, her look is completely changed. Like, her eyes don't look light and happy or scared, or they are just like, I'm a bad bitch. That's what her eyes look like. Her hair is completely different. It's like completely let go. It's kind of frizzled out a little bit. Like, she looks crazy, and she's petting the rabbit. Maybe the actual senor, why can't I think of his name? She's petting the rabbit, she's holding the rabbit, so maybe the rabbit upstairs is Billy, and that fly is Tommy, we'll see. But she's petting the rabbit, and as she's petting the rabbit, she's like, now Wanda, you didn't think you were the only magical girl in town, did you? She's like, it's so nice to finally meet you. I'm Agatha Harkness. And, like, it was one of those, like, that should have been the pop. And when I watched it the second time, I got more excited than the first time. Because, like, we've been saying it's Agatha since day one. You know, last week was the only time I faltered. Because I fell for Agnes's trick a little bit that she put on for Vision. Which we'll see in a moment. But, like, yeah, right from the get-go, we all knew. And she sure enough is. And you can tell she's relishing now that she gets to be it. For the last 2, like, the look on Catherine Hahn's face is just like, I've been waiting 7 episodes to say that out loud. But she's totally all about it. And she's just, you know, like, yeah, you thought you were the only magical girl. So nice to meet you. And that's where you think the episode's going to end. And then all of a sudden, like, she kind of does one of these with her hands. And you see a little bit of purple. And then you see purple latch around Wanda's eyes and, like, head. And you're like, Agnes is showing her what we then see. Which Agatha is kind of showing her what she's been up to since she's been in town. And we get a classic, it felt very Addams Family, maybe the Munsters, in just the type of, like, it goes back to black and white, just like with the words that are up there and the music that they're playing for the theme song. I was just like, oh, this is so like Addams Family, Munsters, like that era of television. And you get like a whole open to the show, Agatha All Along. And the lines to the song, I'm telling you, man, these songs have been so good. The lines here kind of lay it all out for us, right? First things first, we see Agatha literally float into town. And as she lands, her, you know, witch dress transforms into what she needs to be for the first episode of the show. All of a sudden, she has a plant. She looks right at the camera. She does that a whole bunch. And then the words kick in. Who's been messing up everything? And you hear Agatha go, it's been Agatha all along. Then the title comes up. Then we hear, who's been pulling every evil string? And, like, the genius of Marvel, man. Like, they know. Like, when we watch this show, I'm telling you, if I get a conversation, man, where you sitting there just going, we're going to make this show. This is what people are going to do. And because they're doing this, we're going to do this. And it's like, we've been saying, who's pulling the strings from behind the scenes? Who's pulling all the evil strings? Not all of the strings, but the evil strings that have been happening, all the things that are going wrong in town. It's been Agatha all along. Then it's like she's insidious, she's perfidicous, that you haven't even noticed. And now granted, we've noticed, but Wanda has not noticed. And then the pity is pity. It's too late to fix anything. Now that everything has gone wrong, it's been Agatha, naughty Agatha, all along. And the last shot we see is of Agatha doing something. And as that song's playing, the lyrics on all these songs are so good. But the montage that we get goes back and shows us all the things that Agatha's been doing. So we see her, like I said, float into town, change up. She is the one they show the rabbit jumping away when Vision's getting ready to do that trick, and then they go to Agatha, and just in her little hand, she's swirling around her purple magic. So she caused the rabbit to get away, which is trying to cause problems during that show. She comes up in the 70s episode and taps Herb on the shoulder. So Herb is probably not the cat, probably not her familiar Ebony, but someone that like she needed, more help or whatever she was doing. So takes over Herb and actually kind of freezes him, kind of glitches him when he's cutting. That's why he was glitched. And then she must let him out enough to be able to help her. It would be my guess. But you see that, and then we see Pietro standing outside the door, and you see that purple magic coming off his back, and Agatha standing in the yard, like, up to things. I don't think she created Pietro or brought Pietro in, but I think whoever Pietro is, she disguised. Now, saying that makes me go, it's not Mephisto. Because, one, if it was Mephisto would be the big bad of the scenario. It wouldn't be Agatha being the big bad or having her transformed. Like, Mephisto could do all that himself. That makes me think even more so that it's Nightmare. Nightmare can mess with your dreams, but he doesn't necessarily have any kind of illusion power, so Agatha transforms him into Pietro. I'm thinking that maybe that's her. Like, maybe she is the big bad. Maybe not. Maybe she is working for a Mephisto in a grand scheme that, could be, Mephisto be one of the big bads of the whole Phase 4. But clearly, those two are working together. And the reason he looks like the Pietro that he looks like is because Agatha made him that way. Maybe we'll get the reasonings behind why she did such things eventually. But clearly, as we knew, Wanda not responsible for Pietro, also not responsible for his look, and that makes me think that it could be Nightmare, or a lower level henchman somewhere. Like maybe it could be the Grim Reaper. We saw that helmet in the animated open from the 60s. But I feel more than ever that's probably Nightmare teaming up with Agatha, and based on that brooch being 3 beings, there should be one more. That could be Mephisto all the way in the ultimate background. Could be somebody else. But Agatha clearly responsible for the appearance of our Fox Quicksilver. Then we see her in the car with Vision. This is the shot that made me question whether she was Agnes at all. I fell for her own trick. She's just playing along. And when Vision's looking out and like doing this and he's looking out that way and talking, she starts fixing her makeup, kind of gives us a hinty wink, and then goes back into it to fool Vision. So that whole bit, the whole bit of finding Vision out in the or Vision finding her in the outskirts, causing Vision to try to seems like Wanda wants Vision and Hayward wants Vision. Agatha could give a damn about Vision, right? Like, he's just getting in the way at this point because I think Agatha wants those kids. She's been after him. Now the kids are missing after she does get her hands on them. So I think she is the one who's putting up all those obstacles that are stopping Vision from getting home. I don't think that's Wanda's doing, because like she said, if he doesn't want to come back, I got no control over it. I think that's Agatha, and like the song says, everything that's been going wrong in town is Agatha's fault. So we see her fake out Vision. Then we see a shot from this episode where Wanda is doing the confession thing, and who's behind the camera sitting in a director's chair that says Agatha, but Agatha Harkness. She's sitting right there, and there's a lighting kit that's actually kind of blocking her, and you can see Wanda trying to look over to see who's sitting there. And it is, of course, Agatha. And then the very last shot that we get is Agatha holding that dog, and she just looks at the camera and goes, "And I killed Sparky too." And you're like, oh, I knew that she killed Sparky. She didn't find him, and that makes me wonder, like, was it a Wonder Gore plant that she fed him that killed him? Was she using him for the ability to see the future, to try to plan for things? All of these things are things I hope we get into next episode, and things I would love to see going on. Like, just killing the dog to age up the twins seems kind of weird, and the fact that she said he was eating a plant, like, I think she was using him maybe to see the future with the Wonder Gore plant. Like, oh, dude, they could be going so deep with some of these things. But I love that she killed Sparky, didn't find Sparky dead. Like, Agatha's bad. She ain't helping Wanda. I mean, she might be helping Wanda, but it's all got to be for her own benefit or whoever she's working for, if she's working for somebody. But that's it. That's where the episode ends. And it was like, when they went into the opening theme, I was like, cool, we probably got like 5-10 more minutes. We're going to learn some stuff. And then it ended. I was like, these episodes are too short. And clearly, whoever put out that bit about Kevin Feige saying the last 3 episodes were an hour, fake, made it up. A lot of fake stuff around Wanda. A lot of stuff, like weird things happening around this show. But yeah, it was not an hour. I wish it would have been an hour. I could have used another 30 minutes. But excellent end, right? And like I said, while the episode itself didn't have that major pop, certainly gave us a lot of substance and content. And then I thought it was over. I got up, I went to the bathroom, I keep the volume on, I let the credits play out in case anything pops up. I didn't hear anything. And then I'm getting ready to export my non-spoiler. I'm cutting the JPEG, and I like search, WandaVision episode 7, trying to find a picture of Wanda sitting down, talking to the confessional camera. And the first article that comes up before I flip over to images is, episode 7, first post-credit. And I was like, there was no post-credit. I didn't hear anything. I went back. Well, that was because there was no talking, so I didn't hear anything. Sure enough, missed a post-credit. And the post-credit was one I wish I would have seen, because it probably would have made me a little bit more excited than I was right at the very end. Because we see Monica coming down the street, getting to the house that they went into, and she's looking through the windows. She can't find anything. None of the back doors or anything are open. She can't get into the house, and then she sees the cellar doors. She pulls them open, and as soon as she pulls them open, her eyes go up. And it's like, is it helping her see in the dark? Is it just like a defense mechanism? Like, I'm powered up because I don't know what's going on here, because she sees all those roots that were all over the walls, but they're all glowing purple now. So it makes me wonder if, like, there's some sort of tree or plant or vines that are connected to the house that are also connected to Agatha's power set. So like when Agatha's using her power, like they became glowing purple, because they don't glow inside of her lair at all when she's doing stuff. But she sees that, and her eyes literally light up. And then you hear a voice and see a figure behind her go, "Snoop is gonna snoop." And you turn and you look, and there's Pietro. And then I was like, damn, maybe Dottie isn't Pietro. But then again, Dottie's nowhere to be seen in that individual moment. So, like, is Dottie, did Agatha turn Dottie into Pietro? Is Dottie someone we don't know? Is someone else who's also not up on that board at all? Agatha's up there, no ID. Dottie, not up there at all. So it makes you wonder. Or is that a fake trail that they're trying to, like, make us connect? Like, oh, we haven't seen Dottie for 3 episodes, then we saw her, then she was gone, and then Pietro shows up. But clearly Pietro's still around. I don't know what he was doing all day in good old Westview, but he's still around, and my head's broken. I'm taking more notes. I'm talking more than I ever had before, because there's so much going on in this show. Even in the episodes that seem kind of quiet, subtle, like not big in your face episodes, there's so much to unpack in there. And like I said, like, you get some really big reveals. Like, we know for a fact, like, Monica's got superpowers, and they seem to be, I think, her spectrum powers. I could be wrong. I keep hearing people bring up her photon powers. She was Photon, I believe, at one time in the comics, but Maria is Photon. You even see that on her nameplate. So I think these are her spectrum powers, either being turned on for the first time in a long time, or, turned on for the first time. There's a part of me that kind of wants it to be turned on for the first time so that Wanda creates mutants, because that would be pretty cool. But Monica is not a mutant in real life. She was exposed to something that changed her. She's a mutate, as they call them. But anyway, we now know for a fact she's got her powers, and she can use them, at least right now. We now know that Agnes is for sure Agatha, probably the biggest reveal and the one that was like least hit you hard, because we've pretty much known that from day one. But we learned that we learned that Vision has learned more. He now understands what's going on with Wanda and what could be causing this, and he's off to go and try to find her. And we know the kids are MIA after hanging out with Agatha, and it certainly would seem that Agatha wants those kids. So for an episode that, watching live, I was like, I mean, that was good, but like not as good as the last few episodes. When I rewatched this, started writing it in my notes, talking about it right now, I'm like, damn, I love this freaking show. It's so damn good. I have talked way too long this week. Thank God you guys have the chapter markers down below so you can just jump to the things you want to hear me talk about. That's why I just try to talk about all of it. And we have talked about all of it from this episode. Now I want to know what you're thinking, man. What are your theories? Who else do we think, who we think that cameo could be? Magneto, I believe, was trending on Twitter yesterday or early in the morning. People hoping that that's who the cameo is, whether it's Ian McKellen or Fassbender. I would love to see that. It seems like a little bit of a stretch or a leap unless you're in that land of like Magneto's been looking for his daughter and found her in this reality, and that's where Agatha comes in. Who knows? But let me know like what you're thinking about the show, what you took away from this episode. Like I said, who we think is still yet to be shown to us. We know Agatha is pulling all the evil strings. Is there someone pulling all the strings? How much control is Wanda in? Is she starting to lose some of her control? Anything you're thinking, good, bad, and different about Episode 7, Breaking the Fourth Wall. Go spoiler crazy, man. Tell me your favorite things, what you think some of these revealed mean. Everything you got going on about this episode down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old C-Man as we approach the last 2 episodes of WandaVision. Only 2 weeks left. You want to be here for those Fridays where I'm chit-chatting about Wanda and Vision and Agatha and the boys and fake Pietro. You want to be here for all that stuff. You love listening to me talk at length about things like this. You just like what we're doing with trailer reactions. More trailers are coming out, so we're getting more reactions up, more reviews, anything you want to be here for. If you haven't yet, you want to show a little love, support the old C-Man, come join the C-Maniac squad, man. You can come join C-Maniac Nation by becoming a C-Maniac by hitting that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema, sit down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Well, that's all live and breathe. You still here? Check out a video like this one or this one. And hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the C-Man's got at the Cinema Sit Down.